After all, most of these immigrants have been here a long time. They work hard, often in tough, low-paying jobs. They support their families. They worship at our churches. Many of their kids are American-born or spent most of their lives here. And their hopes, dreams, and patriotism are just like ours.
Those who oppose the president's edict on amnesty for illegal immigration find themselves in many ways fighting an uphill battle, and they don't need another opponent. However, they may have one that will be the toughest to win over to their side of the argument: the Pope. This and much more. Let's welcome back to MidPoint, activist, always outspoken in his beliefs, and president of the Catholic League for Religious and Civil Rights since 1993, Bill Donohue joins us on the show. Bill, thanks for joining us. Always a pleasure to see you.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you for having me.
Bill, let's talk about what is happening now with illegal immigration, with the bishops here in America, and with the Pope as well. Because the Chicago Archbishop met last week with the president, and the two talked about immigration reforms. Now, the Pope and certainly the Vatican are telling people you must be compassionate towards immigrants. But then we have a large contingent of people here, mostly Republican, who don't want to allow illegal immigration into the country, immigrants here. Doesn't that sort of put them in opposition to what the Pope wants? Because many of them are, at the end of the day, Christians and or Catholics.
I think that's true, and I think that the Catholic Church, when it comes to immigration, is more on the liberal side of the political agenda. When it comes to moral questions like abortion, doctor-assisted suicide, and the like, it's more on the conservative side. It's got a long history of this. Basically, the Catholic Church is saying is this: if you want to protect your borders, it's your business. Go ahead and have all the fences you want, but once people have made their way into the country, even if they came in illegally, and these people need services, you can't turn your back on them. You've got to reach out to these people and resolve the problem. Now, as we know, the Republicans basically don't want to deal with this issue because they want the cheap labor. The Democrats don't want to deal with this issue because they want the votes. So that's why we've had no immigration reform since 1986. There's a lot of blame to go around, and I think the bishops are just feeling exasperated at this point.
Is it fair to say, though, and again, we're not putting words in anybody's mouth here, but just taking what you said and what we're reading here and what we find out, that if someone is a Republican, and again, I'm not blaming anybody for anything here, but if you're a Republican and if you are against illegal immigration, aren't you against the church then at that point? And that's very difficult. How do you then reconcile that, I guess?
Well, all right, there's basically a hierarchy of values here in the Catholic Church. For example, abortion, which I just mentioned, that's called intrinsically evil. You cannot be a faithful Catholic and say that you're pro-abortion. Now, when you get to the question of immigration, it's like helping the poor. The Catholic Church wants to reach out to the migrant, and they also want to help the poor, but it doesn't have a specific way of doing it. The Catholic Church doesn't favor, for example, progressive taxation or a flat tax. That leaves it up to the people. The same thing with immigration. A Catholic can be a Catholic in good standing, go to church and communion every single Sunday, and still disagree with the bishops on this. I might add, Ed, while you're not going to hear too much of this, there are bishops who don't agree with the actual bishops' conference statement on this particular issue.
Then isn't that fair to say, too, what you just talked about, that what the Pope is doing now is he is silencing, at least this is what people are seeing, silencing a lot of American bishops right now and trying to bring them more into line with what he believes and what the Vatican believes? We've got a real schism going on here, don't we?
Well, I think silencing might be a little too strong. I definitely think he's jawboning. I definitely think he's putting pressure. He's setting the tone, and they're very much pro-immigration, even the illegal immigrants. And that does leave a lot of Catholics in a quandary. But I caution about the idea that somehow I might not be a good Catholic if I disagree. Again, there are a lot of cardinals and bishops who disagree with the Pope on this issue. They disagree with the Bishops' Conference on this issue, even if they might be somewhat reluctant to say so publicly.
But aren't Catholics, and again, here's just another one of those things we hear over the years and over the decades, aren't Catholics supposed to follow the lead of the Pope and the Vatican and do, and I'm not trying to make this tough here, but do as they're told?
Actually, that's not true. The Catholic Church, for example, believes that the Pope is infallible on questions of faith and morals when he speaks in an official capacity. Twice in history has a Pope invoked that, basically in the 1850s and in the 1950s. Now, there's a hierarchy here. You're supposed to accept what the Pope says and treat it very carefully, particularly if it comes out in an encyclical. When it gets to questions outside of faith and morals, and that would certainly be a case of immigration, that's the social policy issues, you can still feel free to disagree with the Catholic Church and be a Catholic in good standing.
All right, that answers one question here. Bill, please stand by. We're back with Bill Donohue after the break and touch on how atheists are once again taking aim on Christmas this season. And, of course, they're using the media. And at 43 minutes after the hour, the professor who says he has proof. Everybody here in America is always told to believe that there is an American dream in this country. You can be anyone and anything you want. He says the American dream is dead. As a matter of fact, he says it never existed. We'll talk with him when MidPoint continues.